Hey, welcome back to Sprague Homestead. I'm Kanan.
I'm Nikki.
And on this week's Would You Rather, our topic is going to be, would you rather
do food preservation by canning, freeze drying, or freezing?
All right, so we're going to take 5 minutes off camera to each of us come up with what our decision would be of the 3 choices this week and why. All right, so after 5 minutes of deliberation, I get to go first, according to Nikki. And of the 3, canning, freezing, and freeze drying, well, this one is going to be a mix. I'll tell you, probably the one I would not choose of the 3 is freeze drying. One, the equipment is very expensive in comparison to the other 2. Second one is, as the guy that controls the power and everything else being off-grid on solar, the last thing I want is something that requires a lot of power and is going to run 24, 28 hours, or whatever it takes to do that. The last thing I want to do is sign up for that, because I know overnight I won't sleep wondering if I'm draining all my power out, knowing that the next day could be cloudy and you may not get your power back. So I'm going to take that one out of the discussion because it's number 3 out of those. Now, out of the canning and freeze drying, or the freezing, I should say, of the 2, there are definitely advantages to freezing. One, I don't can, so I'm really not a very good person to talk to about canning. So freezing, I can run the vacuum seal, as you will. Done it before, so I could, do some vacuum and sealing and put it in the freezer, which is pretty easy to do. Again, though, for power-wise, if that was one of my big major holdbacks, maybe I wasn't so good on solar or something else, I may not want to do that one. Now for canning, well, I've watched Nikki can. I've never done it myself, so I can't say it's a great thing. But I'll tell you what, I have eaten a lot of stuff that she has canned, and it has been spectacular.
I think he's going for brownie points.
Does that ever not work, though? I mean, really?
Yeah, no, it really doesn't.
All right, so out of the 2 of canning or freezing, I'd say for me personally, it's going to be freezing because it's easier on me and I don't know how to can. But I think canning in this respect, I think is a little bit more shelf stable. Doesn't require power beyond to store, where freezing, you're going to have power from, I guess, the moment you put it in there till it's used. I'd pick canning over this. I don't know how to do it.
That was a really long way.
Is that a really long way to get it?
It was. Well, I mean, we drove in circles around a lot of things. Okay, so Kaden, your answer is you're going with canning?
Yes. Liza,
okay.
What is the best one?
Well, she prefers her meats frozen.
That's right.
Thawed and then gently roasted.
Hello.
For her. But I'm going to go with canning.
Okay.
And the reason I'm going to go with canning is, one, I think, and this is not going to be popular because I know a lot of people that watch us actually do have freeze dryers. I think freeze dryers are fadsy. I think that they're expensive. I think they're grossly overrated. And it seems to me like the people that freeze dry do it in almost a hoarding type way. Like I said, I know people who have it, and they freeze dry everything to the point that they go and buy frozen vegetables to bring them home to freeze dry them. And while I respect that it makes them, long-term shelf stable if you keep the oxygen out of them and all that, I think it tends to create kind of a false sense of security a little bit. I prefer canning. We've held stuff can jars all the way up to 10 years, and they're still fine if you store them right. I don't want to hold anything for 10 and 20 and 30 years. To me, that's not turning over my stock. Not only that, but we live in the desert, and freeze-dried foods require water. My canned goods don't. They're already moist. They're already soups or, meats with their own broth or whatever it is. And that's something I feel like you have to think about here is, when I go to use it, what does that entail? I can, open a jar of anything and eat it right out of the jar if I want. I mean, some of that's not sexy, but you could do it. I can tons of stuff. The thing I don't like about the freezer, we freeze quite a bit of our meat. Not even the majority anymore, but we do freeze quite a bit of the meat. Freezing space is finite.
Very true.
Canning space is not. So when the pantry is full, and Canning can tell you, because we have a really small place, sometimes there are stacks of canned goods in the guest room. There have been stacks of canned goods in the laundry area. There's been stacks of canned goods in the mudroom, especially during a good harvest when you're canning a lot and you don't necessarily have time to get it in the pantry or you're out of pantry space. Those jars can go darn near anywhere.
Right.
Freeze drying, you kind of still put them in jars or buckets or whatever, and you can, but you have to be really worried about oxygen, O2, I can't think of absorbers going bad. I feel the same way about the whole power thing. It takes really long. In the time it takes somebody to run a freeze dryer, like my mom's got one, so I kind of know what the time involved here is. In the time it takes that freeze dryer, I can do like 3 or 4 loads in the canner. Right. So for time to volume, I feel like it's far more efficient. Yeah, sometimes your canned goods don't look pretty. And I think that's what a lot of people struggle with is they go, oh, well, the colors leach out. Like if you can vegetables, they never look as good unless they're pickled. They never look as good coming out of that canner, right? Green beans kind of get darker. Peas turn colors.
Well, I'll say this. She showed me a jar yesterday, I think, of the recent Mexican carrots she made, right? We had some good carrots in that. And she used red onions this time, where in the past we've used whites. So she used red this time, and the whole thing is red.
Yeah, it's turning pink and red.
Yeah, it's like red carrots and everything else. And I know what they taste like, and they're going to be awesome to taste. But, yeah, you're right. You look at them and go, oh, I don't know if I want
some of your
red
soups
stuff.
don't look as pretty
Right.
coming out of the canner as they do coming out of the freezer or vegetables coming out of the freeze dryer. But because you're eating a lot of the broth and stuff that you're cooking it in, you're still getting the nutrients. There's the studies that I've seen, it's very little difference. And that's a big thing with the freeze drying. People tell you, oh, it's so much more nutritious. The studies I've seen, there's not that much difference. Not to justify me going out and spending $2,000 for the small unit.
Right.
In that price, I can buy a new Presto canner, which is about $250, and I can buy literally cases upon cases upon cases of jars and lids.
Right.
So I don't feel like it's financially a good idea. If you've got one, you love it, hey, that's fine. I don't feel like it's necessarily the best preservation method. So, like Kane and I am going with canning. But we want to hear what everybody else thinks. Of the 3, and I know everybody keeps bringing in these other things when we ask these questions. Of the 3, freezing, canning, freeze drying, what would you rather do? If you could only do one, what would you rather do? I would go with canning.
I'm going to go with canning also. So they have it. 2 canning, nothing for freezing, although it's still worth mentioning. But freeze drying, I think, for us is definitely bottom of the list. It's not worth the hype to us. So, and we've done without it. So leave us down below what you want of those 3. And if you have any suggestions for other topics to do on Would You Rather at a later date, go ahead and throw those down in the comments below. We're adding those as people make them into our list, as long as they're not duplicates of what we have already. So with that, we'll leave you with that on Would You Rather for this week, and we will see you next time.
Happy homesteading.